We hope for their sake they don't do anything foolish. If they do, they will pay a price like nobody's ever paid a price.
Already high tensions between Iran and the U.S. and its allies have reached a boiling point in the last 24 hours. First, President Donald Trump announced that the U.S. destroyed an Iranian drone. Then he warned Iran not to retaliate or else. And now Iran has seized a British ship in the Strait of Hormuz. There are 23 personnel on board, and there are reports a second ship with British ties has been captured as well. Britain's Foreign Secretary is calling the seizures unacceptable. He's convening an emergency security meeting to address the situation. And in Washington, U.S. President Trump, just not long ago, had this to say.
We have a lot of ships there that are warships, and we'll talk to the UK. Iran is in big trouble right now. Their economy is crashing. It's coming to a crash. They're trying to bring soldiers back home because they can't pay them. A lot of bad things are happening to them. And it's very easy to straighten out, or it's very easy for us to make it a lot worse.
So just how troubling are these developments? Can the temperature be turned down, or will it continue to go up? Besma Momani is an analyst on Middle East politics and a senior fellow at the Center for International Governance Innovation in Waterloo. She joins us now via Skype. Hi, Professor Momani. Nice to see you again. Thanks for your time.
Nice to see you. Thank you.
From your perspective, how serious an escalation is this?
Well, it's serious, but the only sort of glimmer of hope here is that there is some sort of back channel happening at the moment as we speak in New York with Javad Zarif, which is the foreign minister of Iran, and Rand Paul, who has been sort of kind of tapped by the Trump administration to have some sort of back negotiation. So hopefully that's kind of the silver lining. Of course, with 20% of all oil going through the Strait of Hormuz, it's not nothing. And this is the kind of fear that many of us who have been watching this sort of tit-for-tat situation between Iran and the U.S. and the West generally, fearful of things kind of going wrong. So that's the dark side of this, but really don't know how this is going to play out in the next few days.
The headlines, of course, center around the dispute between Iran and the U.S., but this is a British ship, and the second one is a Liberian one reportedly with British ties. Why the U.K.?
Well, this is the way that Iran operates. It really tries to not go for the juggernaut directly. It really tries to go around it. But of course, and so we wouldn't want to go after an American ship. That would really, I think, cross the line. And they don't want to test Donald Trump, who's very sort of unorthodox. But also we have to keep in mind here that the Brits off the coast of Gibraltar had seized a Iranian ship that was destined to Syria. This is not the first time that the Iranians have had ships that have gone from Gibraltar through to Syria, but it was clearly seen in the context of U.S.-Iranian escalation. And in fact, the Iranians charged that this was really done at the U.S.'s bidding. So I think this is, again, that tit for tat, and it's a way to sort of put pressure on the West and the European countries to come up with a solution to what they see as a very difficult economic situation after the canceling of the JCPOA or the Iran deal a year ago today.
When you say tit for tat, do you think that this is just a direct response to the downing of the drone, for example?
I think so, and I think more so for the vessel that was seized by the British authorities off the coast of Gibraltar.
And what about the UK's response? We know, for example, that the minister talked about convening an emergency meeting. Does the UK have room to operate alone here, or are they going to need the support of the US? I know you're talking about those back channels as well.
Well, I think they need the support of the U.S. because the UK is in a bit of a shambles at the moment, and the Iranians know that. In fact, I think targeting the Brits is also part of their calculation. They're very smart and very strategic about what they do. They wouldn't want to, again, as I said, target an American vessel or American flagged vessel. And in fact, that's one of the sort of options that was used in the past to try and have safe passage for a lot of international ships. There were no British citizens on these ships, in fact, even though they were vessels are owned by the Brits. And so they're very careful about these things. They study them very well in a way to provoke the U.S. and the West into negotiations, which is what they want, but not crossing any sort of red lines here.
I wanted to ask you if you think there's any difference in the way the U.S. and its allies will respond to something like this, given the sort of change in arrangements since the deal was, the U.S. withdrew from the deal? And I'm asking because, prior to that, they might have been acting in concert. Now there are a number of countries and allies of the U.S. that didn't want that country to withdraw from the deal and have been hesitant to sort of attach themselves to the U.S. rhetoric about Iran. So I'm just wondering, sort of from your perspective, what the calculation is for allies.
Yeah, I mean, Europe is divided at the moment. Obviously, the French and the Germans are the key countries in the JCPOA. They're the ones really trying to work in the background as much as possible by finding ways around the U.S. sanctions that are crippling Iran and trying to keep the deal alive. The Brits are, of course, a part of that. But again, because of UK politics at the moment, Theresa May's government is pretty much, hamstrung. There is a fight amongst the Conservatives at the moment who will take over. And so all of that, I think, means, and the Iranians know this well, that they're not going to be able to react so forcefully. But of course, I think the European countries are very much concerned with Donald Trump, with his foreign policy, with the fact that we're even having negotiations today, this back channel between Zarif and Rand Paul, essentially back to the same terms, frankly, that are included in the 2015 JCPOA agreement from the very preamble, which was about, suggesting that the Iranians never acquire nuclear technology. It's all there. But of course, Donald Trump does not want to be hold on to a legacy of an agreement signed by his predecessor, Barack Obama. And that's really the key issue here.
So what do you watch for from here? Are you watching those back channel talks, and what else?
Very much seeing what's happening in New York today to see whether or not we get more statements and leaks coming out of those meetings. Those leaks, I think, are an attempt to also, I think, make the Iranians are leaking it, I think, to ensure that dialogue continues. Donald Trump, of course, is war weary. I don't think he's interested in a war, but we can't take our eyes off of John Bolton and Mike Pompeo, because these two hawks have been arguing for regime change in Iran for decades. And they're very conscious of the fact that Donald Trump may be out of office in less than 2 years and want this done. And that's not nothing. And I think that's really important to keep in mind as we watch all of this.
What are the chances, do you think, of the temperature being turned down? I imagine they hinge on those talks.
Very much hinge on those talks. And I think, the Iranians, need to be very careful here. One wrong move and things can spiral out of control. That's what happens in many of these kinds of conflicts. We saw some accusations that there may have been targeting of IRGC positions inside Iraq a few days ago. I mean, all of that is, I think, going to potentially cause a reaction by the Iranians. Everybody's very careful, of course, I think, in trying not to cross the line. But when you know that there are hawks like, I believe, in the Trump administration and even in the IRGC in Iran itself, who also feel that they would, in fact, be able to survive some sort of conflict with the Americans, you can't help but worry about how this could engulf into a wider conflict. And let's not forget, the Iranians have a lot of proxies throughout the region that could be invoked, and that, I think, would also make this into a wider regional conflict as well.
All right, I'll leave it there. Thank you so much, Professor Momani. That's Professor Besma Momani, Senior Fellow at the Center for International Governance Innovation in Waterloo. Appreciate your time.
Pleasure.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video. Thanks for watching.